My name is Erin, and I am a 27-year-old graphic designer living in Arizona. When I think about family loyalty, I used to believe my younger sister Madison and I had an unbreakable bond. She was getting married in just 1 week to Tyler, a successful lawyer, and our whole family was buzzing with excitement about the lavish ceremony our parents were funding. I had been dating Jake, a talented photographer, for 8 months, and everything seemed perfect in my world. Madison was 24, always the spoiled baby of the family, but I thought I understood her completely. I was so wrong. Before I dive into what happened next, please let me know where you are watching from, and do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real family stories that will shock you. Because what I am about to share will completely change how you think about loyalty and trust within families, and you will not believe how this wedding day unfolded. It was a Saturday afternoon, exactly 1 week before Madison's big day. I was supposed to arrive at our parents' house at 4 p.m. for my final bridesmaid dress fitting, but I finished my client work early and decided to surprise everyone by showing up at 2:30 instead. Madison had been incredibly stressed about the wedding preparations, constantly calling our mother Linda about every tiny detail. Tyler was away on a business trip in Denver, which had been adding to her anxiety. Jake was busy that weekend photographing another couple's pre-wedding session, so I figured spending extra time with my sister would help calm her nerves. I used my spare key to let myself into our childhood home, expecting to find Madison frantically organizing wedding favors or obsessing over seating charts. Instead, I heard voices coming from the living room and assumed she was having another one of her endless FaceTime calls, with Tyler probably discussing last-minute venue changes or menu adjustments. I was about to call out and announce my early arrival when something made me pause at the doorway. What I saw next will forever be burned into my memory. There, on our parents' cream-colored sofa, Madison and Jake were wrapped in each other's arms, kissing with a passion that made my stomach drop to the floor. This was not a friendly peck or an innocent moment of comfort. They were completely lost in each other. Jake's hands tangled in her long blonde hair, while she pressed herself against him like her life depended on it. I stood there frozen for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds, watching the two people I trusted most in the world betray me in the most devastating way possible. My phone slipped from my trembling fingers and hit the hardwood floor with a loud crack that finally broke their intimate bubble. Madison jerked away from Jake like she had been electrocuted, her face instantly flushing bright red as tears began streaming down her cheeks. Jake just stood there, looking like a deer caught in headlights, his mouth opening and closing without any words coming out. The silence in that room was deafening, broken only by Madison's immediately starting to sob. "Oh my God, Erin, I can explain!" Madison choked out between her tears, rushing toward me with her arms outstretched like she expected a hug. "This is not what it looks like, I swear. I was just having a moment of weakness because of all the wedding stress and—" "Please do not touch me," I managed to whisper, taking several steps backward as the full reality of what I had witnessed began sinking in. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pick up my cracked phone from the floor. Jake finally found his voice, though it came out as a pathetic whimper. "Erin, baby, let me explain what really happened here. I was just trying to comfort Madison because she was having a breakdown about the wedding, and things got out of hand for just a second." "A second?" I asked, my voice growing stronger as anger began replacing the initial shock. "That looked pretty comfortable to me. How long has this been going on?" Madison immediately went into full manipulation mode, something I had seen her do countless times throughout our childhood whenever she got caught doing something wrong. She fell to her knees, dramatically grabbing at my hands, while huge crocodile tears rolled down her face. "Erin, please, you have to believe me. This literally just happened right before you walked in. I have been so overwhelmed with everything, and Tyler has been working so much lately that I barely see him. I felt so alone and scared, and Jake was just being sweet and trying to make me feel better. I do not know how it happened, but I immediately knew it was wrong. You are my sister, and I love you more than anyone in the world. Jake nodded eagerly, jumping on Madison's explanation like a life preserver. That is exactly right, babe. Madison called me crying because she was having a panic attack about the wedding, and I came over to talk her through it. We were just sitting on the couch talking, and she started crying harder, so I gave her a hug to comfort her. I guess the emotions just got overwhelming, and we both made a terrible mistake. But it meant nothing, absolutely nothing. I looked back and forth between them, these two people, who had just shattered my world into a million pieces, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Madison was still on her knees, clutching at my jeans and begging for forgiveness, while Jake stood behind her, running his hands through his hair and looking like he might throw up. "Get away from me," I said quietly, pulling my legs free from Madison's desperate grip. "Both of you just stay away from me." I grabbed my purse and headed for the front door, ignoring Madison's increasingly hysterical pleas for me to stay and talk things through. Jake called after me, promising he would come by my apartment later to explain everything properly. But I just kept walking. I needed to get out of that house before I completely lost control of my emotions in front of them. That night was the longest of my entire life. I sat on my apartment floor, still wearing the same clothes from that afternoon, crying until I had no tears left. Jake called me 47 times before I finally turned off my phone, and Madison sent me endless text messages that ranged from apologetic to angry to manipulative. I ignored them all because I needed time to process what I had discovered and figure out what I was going to do about it. The more I thought about the situation, the more I realized this betrayal was not completely out of character for Madison. Growing up, she had always been jealous of anything good that happened to me. When I made honor roll, she would suddenly develop mysterious illnesses that required all of our parents' attention. When I got my first boyfriend in high school, she started flirting with him at every family gathering, until he began paying more attention to her than to me. Last summer, at our family barbecue, I caught her getting a little too friendly with my ex-boyfriend Marcus, touching his arm and laughing at everything he said in a way that made me uncomfortable. But this felt different because Jake was not just some casual boyfriend. We had been talking about moving in together, and I thought we might actually have a future. The betrayal cut twice as deep because it came from both my sister and the man I was falling in love with. Sunday morning arrived with Madison pounding on my apartment door at 8 a.m., armed with my favorite coffee, a bouquet of white roses, and what she called her completely honest explanation of what had really happened. I reluctantly let her in because I knew she would not leave until we talked, and part of me desperately wanted to believe there was some reasonable explanation for what I had seen. Madison settled onto my couch and launched into an elaborate story about how overwhelmed she had been feeling about the wedding. She talked about the pressure our mother had been putting on her to make everything perfect, her anxiety about committing to Tyler for the rest of her life, and how lonely she felt because Tyler had been working such long hours preparing for a big trial. According to Madison, she had called Jake in tears because she needed someone to talk to who would not judge her pre-wedding jitters. "Erin, you are the only person in this family I can really trust," she said, reaching for my hands across the coffee table. "I know how this must look, but I swear to you on our grandmother's grave that nothing like this has ever happened before. I was just in such a dark place yesterday, and when Jake came over to check on me, I felt so grateful to have someone who understood. The kiss was just a moment of weakness, a stupid mistake that happened because my emotions were all over the place. Was." She went on to explain how she would rather hurt herself than hurt me, and how she would call off the entire wedding if that was what it took to prove her love for me as a sister. She even threatened that she might do something drastic if I could not find it in my heart to forgive her, which was classic Madison manipulation that I had fallen for many times before. About an hour after Madison left, Jake showed up at my door with pizza from my favorite restaurant and his guitar case slung over his shoulder. He had brought everything needed to recreate one of our early dates when he serenaded me on my balcony, clearly hoping that nostalgia would work in his favor. "Please, just give me 5 minutes to explain what really happened yesterday," he begged, setting the pizza box down on my kitchen counter like we were having a normal evening together. Madison called me crying hysterically because she was having what sounded like a panic attack about the wedding. She said she needed someone to talk to who was not family, someone who could give her an outside perspective on whether she was making the right decision marrying Tyler. According to Jake, Madison had been feeling trapped and scared about getting married so young, and she needed reassurance that her feelings were normal. He claimed that when he arrived at the house, she was curled up on the couch sobbing, and he sat down next to her to offer comfort. The kiss happened when she threw her arms around him to thank him for listening, and before either of them realized what was happening, they had crossed a line. "Baby, I promise you that kiss meant absolutely nothing to me," Jake said, reaching for his guitar like he was about to start playing my favorite song. "Madison is beautiful, but she is your sister, and she could never compare to what we have together. I was just trying to be a good friend to someone who was struggling, and I let things go too far for like 10 seconds. It will never happen again, I swear." But something about their matching stories felt too rehearsed, too convenient. So that evening, I decided to do some investigating of my own. I went through Jake's phone while he was in the shower, something I had never done before in our entire relationship, and what I found made my blood run cold. There were text messages between Jake and Madison, going back almost 3 months, filled with inside jokes, late-night conversations, and gradually escalating flirtation. The messages started innocent enough, with Madison asking Jake about photography techniques for her wedding pictures. But they quickly evolved into personal conversations about their relationships, their dreams, and eventually complaints about Tyler and me. By last month, they were texting each other good morning and good night every single day, and Madison was sending Jake pictures of herself in various outfits asking for his opinion. The most damaging message was from just 2 weeks ago, when Madison wrote, "I cannot stop thinking about what it would be like to kiss you." Jake's response was not a rejection or a reminder about boundaries. Instead, he wrote back, "I have been wondering the same thing." I confronted Jake with the evidence when he came out of the bathroom, and his entire story fell apart immediately. He tried to claim the messages were taken out of context, but there was no innocent explanation for months of secret communication and emotional affair. When I asked him to leave and never contact me again, he actually got angry and accused me of being paranoid and jealous. The next morning, my mother called to guilt-trip me about potentially ruining Madison's wedding with unnecessary drama. According to Linda, Madison had confessed to having a tiny moment of poor judgment, but insisted it was meaningless. Our mother was more concerned about the family's reputation and the money already spent on the wedding than she was about her older daughter's broken heart. "Erin, honey, I know you are hurt, but Madison is getting married in 5 days," Mom said in her most condescending tone. "This is supposed to be the happiest week of her life, and you are being incredibly selfish by making this about you. Everyone makes mistakes when they are under pressure, and Madison needs her sister's support right now, not judgment." That conversation was my breaking point. I realized that if I wanted justice for this betrayal, I was going to have to take matters into my own hands. Madison and Jake were counting on my silence, on my desire to keep peace in the family. But Tyler deserved to know the truth about the woman he was about to marry, and I decided I was going to be the one to tell him. I called Tyler on Tuesday morning and asked if we could meet for coffee before the wedding weekend chaos began. He immediately agreed, probably assuming I wanted to discuss some bridesmaid-related detail or maybe plan a surprise for Madison. We met at Blue Mountain Cafe downtown, a quiet place where we could talk privately without running into family members or wedding vendors. Tyler arrived looking handsome and relaxed, clearly excited about marrying my sister in just 4 days. He ordered his usual black coffee and started talking about how grateful he was to be gaining me as a sister-in-law, which made what I had to tell him even more difficult. But I knew he deserved to know the truth before he legally bound himself to Madison forever. Tyler, I need to tell you something important about Madison, and I need you to promise me you will let me finish before you react. I began, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone to show him the screenshot evidence I had prepared. I told him everything. About catching Madison and Jake kissing passionately on my parents' couch, about their months of secret text messages, about Madison's history of jealousy and inappropriate behavior with my boyfriends, and about how they had clearly planned to keep this affair secret indefinitely. I showed him the text message screenshots explained the timeline of their relationship and watched his face gradually change from confusion to shock to anger to a cold, calm determination that honestly scared me a little. Tyler listened to my entire story without interrupting, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions about dates and details. When I finished talking, he sat in silence for several long minutes, staring down at his coffee cup like he was trying to process everything I had just told him. "Thank you for telling me this," he finally said, his voice completely steady and controlled. "I know this could not have been easy for you, and I appreciate your honesty more than you know. I need some time to decide how I want to handle this situation, but I want you to know that I believe you completely. There have been some things about Madison's behavior lately that did not quite add up, and now everything makes perfect sense." Tyler asked me not to say anything to Madison about our conversation, and he assured me that whatever he decided to do, he would handle it in a way that protected me from any backlash. We hugged goodbye, and he promised to let me know what he planned to do before the wedding day arrived. Over the next few days, Tyler conducted his own investigation into Madison's betrayal. He hired a private investigator who confirmed not only the emotional affair with Jake, but also discovered that Madison had been lying about several other things throughout their relationship. She had been secretly meeting up with an ex-boyfriend from college, had racked up thousands of dollars in credit card debt that she had hidden from Tyler, and had even lied about being accepted to graduate school just to make herself seem more ambitious and driven. Meanwhile, Madison continued with her wedding preparations, like nothing had happened, completely unaware that Tyler now knew everything. She spent the week getting her nails done, having final dress fittings, and posting excited updates on social media about her upcoming fairy tale wedding. She even had the audacity to ask me if Jake could take some candid photos during the reception, since the professional photographer they hired was so expensive. Jake made one final attempt to win me back on Thursday night, showing up at my apartment with a fake engagement ring and a speech about how losing me had made him realize I was the woman he wanted to spend his life with. The timing was so obviously calculated to manipulate me into silence before the weekend that it actually made me laugh. "You had 8 months to propose to me, Jake," I told him as I handed the ring back without even looking at it. "You chose to spend those months texting my sister and planning secret meetings instead. That tells me everything I need to know about your priorities and your character." Friday morning, Tyler sent me a text message that simply said, "Thank you for giving me my freedom. Watch what happens at 3 p.m. tomorrow." Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for an outdoor wedding ceremony. Madison was glowing as she got ready in the bridal suite, surrounded by our grandmother Martha, who had flown in from Texas, and 3 of her college friends who were serving as bridesmaids. She looked absolutely stunning in her $3,000 designer gown, and if I had not known what I knew, I would have been crying happy tears at how beautiful my little sister looked on her wedding day. The ceremony was set to begin at 3 o'clock at the Scottsdale Resort, with 150 guests in attendance. Everything was perfect on the surface: white roses, and baby's breath everywhere, a string quartet playing classical music, and a breathtaking view of the Arizona mountains as the backdrop. Madison's joy seemed completely genuine as she prepared to walk down the aisle to marry the man she claimed to love, while secretly betraying him with my boyfriend. The wedding ceremony began exactly on schedule, with Tyler looking handsome and composed as he took his place at the altar. Madison appeared at the back of the aisle, looking like something out of a fairy tale, her face radiant with happiness, as our father Robert, who had flown in from California, prepared to walk her down the aisle. The string quartet played the traditional wedding march, and every guest stood to honor the bride as she made her way toward what she thought would be the beginning of her happily ever after. When Madison reached Tyler at the altar, she handed her bouquet to me as the maid of honor, and took Tyler's hands with a smile that could have powered the entire resort. The officiant began the ceremony with the traditional opening words about love and commitment, and everything proceeded normally until it was time for Tyler to recite his wedding vows. Instead of pulling out the romantic speech he had been working on for months, Tyler cleared his throat and looked out at the assembled guests with a calm, steady expression that immediately made me nervous. Madison was still beaming at him, completely unaware that her world was about to explode in front of everyone she had ever known. "Before Madison and I exchange vows," Tyler announced in a clear, carrying voice, "I need to share something important with all of you who have gathered here today to celebrate what you believed would be our marriage." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd as guests began looking at each other with puzzled expressions. Madison's smile faltered slightly, but she still had no idea what was coming. Our mother leaned forward in the front row, probably thinking Tyler was about to deliver some kind of surprise romantic declaration. 4 days ago, I learned that Madison has been having an emotional and physical affair with her sister Erin's boyfriend Jake for the past 3 months. Tyler continued, his voice never wavering despite the gasps and shocked exclamations erupting from the crowd. "I have seen the evidence of their secret relationship, including hundreds of text messages and witness confirmation of their physical intimacy. I also discovered that Madison has been lying to me about many other aspects of her life, including her finances, her education, and her relationships with other men." Madison's face went completely white as she stared at Tyler in absolute horror. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out as the full reality of what was happening began to sink in. Behind me, I could hear our mother making strangled, gasping sounds, and someone in the audience actually screamed, "I cannot and will not marry someone who has shown such a complete lack of respect for our relationship and such a willingness to deceive me about fundamental aspects of her character," Tyler concluded. "Madison, I hope someday you find whatever it is you are really looking for, but it is not going to be with me." The chaos that erupted after Tyler's announcement was unlike anything I have ever witnessed. Madison collapsed to her knees in her wedding dress, screaming and sobbing hysterically, as the reality of losing Tyler and being publicly humiliated in front of everyone she knew hit her all at once. Several guests stood up and started shouting questions or expressing their shock, while others began pulling out their phones to record the drama unfolding before them. Jake, who had been hiding in the back, taking candid photos as Madison had requested, tried to sneak out through a side exit when Tyler specifically mentioned him by name. But our Uncle Dave, who played football in college and still maintained an impressive physique, blocked his path and loudly announced to everyone that the photographer was the other man involved in the affair. Our mother actually fainted and had to be caught by our father, while Grandmother Martha surprised everyone by loudly declaring, "Good for you, young man. Better to find out now than after the papers are signed," Our extended family members were divided between those who were horrified by the public spectacle and those who were secretly thrilled by the most dramatic event in our family's history. Madison, still on her knees in the dirt, pointed at me through her tears and screamed, "This is all your fault, Erin. You are just jealous because I am prettier and younger, and you could not stand to see me happy. You ruined my life because you are a bitter, pathetic loser who cannot keep a man." Tyler looked down at her with a mixture of pity and disgust before walking away from the altar with his head held high. Several of his groomsmen followed him along with many of the guests, who were clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. Madison continued screaming accusations and insults until our father finally picked her up and carried her away from the ceremony site like a child having a tantrum. In the aftermath of the wedding disaster, I found myself helping to clean up the reception area that would never be used, surrounded by wilted flowers and unused wedding favors that represented thousands of dollars and months of planning. My cousin Sarah and my best friend Amanda rallied around me, making sure I was okay and helping me process what had just happened. The next few months were a period of significant change for our entire family. Our father, who had always favored Madison and dismissed my concerns about her behavior, finally saw her true character and apologized to me for years of enabling her manipulation. He admitted that he had been so focused on keeping peace and avoiding conflict that he had allowed Madison to get away with behavior that hurt other people, especially me. Madison faced serious consequences for her actions beyond just losing Tyler. Word of the wedding scandal spread quickly through our social circle, and she lost many of her friends who were disgusted by her betrayal of her own sister. Her reputation in our community was permanently damaged, and she was forced to move back in with our parents while she figured out how to rebuild her life from scratch. For me, the experience was ultimately liberating despite the initial pain. I realized that I deserved so much better than a boyfriend who could be seduced by my sister, and a family dynamic that prioritized keeping Madison happy over protecting me from her harmful behavior. I started setting firm boundaries with my family members and refused to enable Madison's victim mentality or manipulation tactics. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I was thriving in a new position at a prestigious design firm, living in a beautiful apartment downtown, and dating a wonderful man named David, who treated me with the respect and loyalty I had always deserved. Madison, meanwhile, was attending therapy and slowly learning to take responsibility for her actions and their consequences. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that sometimes protecting someone's feelings means enabling their worst behavior, and that real love requires honest accountability. I spent years covering for Madison's jealousy and selfishness because I thought that was what good sisters do, but all I was really doing was allowing her to hurt me and other people without facing any consequences. The truth might cause temporary pain, but lies and deception destroy relationships permanently. When you know something that could prevent someone from making a terrible mistake, especially something as serious as marriage, you have a moral obligation to speak up, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes you or how much drama it might cause. Looking back, I am grateful that I found the courage to tell Tyler the truth about Madison's betrayal, even though it meant destroying my sister's wedding day and facing months of family conflict. Tyler deserved to know who he was really marrying, and Madison needed to face the consequences of her choices instead of getting rewarded for them with a beautiful wedding and a loyal husband she did not deserve. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to participate in their lives, even when they are your own family member. Truth and accountability are not always comfortable, but they are the foundation of any relationship worth having, and I would rather have difficult, honest relationships than easy ones built on deception and manipulation. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what was right? Let me know in the comments below, and please give this video a like if you believe honesty is always the best policy, even when it is painful. Do not forget to subscribe for more real family stories that will make you think about your own relationships, and share this video with someone who needs to hear about the importance of setting boundaries with toxic family members. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you find the courage to stand up for yourself when the people closest to you try to take advantage of your love and loyalty.